In this section, we're going to focus on acknowledgement and listening, and listening that is very, very unique to collaborative relational intelligence. Acknowledgement is a very, very important leadership technique because they say acknowledgement is a universal language. Everybody likes to be acknowledged. Everybody in the universe likes to be acknowledged as human beings. Regular recognition of a job well done unwinds tension and boosts morale, and it does that everywhere, at home or wherever. And guess what? Even physicians too need that. They need to be acknowledged. So acknowledgement or praise, kind of like they're interchangeable, is really very important. But it's only important if you use it appropriately. So there are some things that you need to do when you're acknowledging people for it to be effective, especially physicians, and there are things that you really want to avoid. So when you try to acknowledge people, especially physicians, you want to be specific. You want to focus on their achievements, especially physicians that are impersonal. Don't go to them and say, oh, you always dress like this. Oh, I love. No, try to focus on the achievement and focus on a specific achievement. Make sure you give this feedback, this acknowledgement, which is also a feedback. You want to make it timely. Avoid flattery. People know when you flatter them. A lot of times we flatter people, we sweet talk them, but guess what? It's actually a turn off to a lot of people that will not tell you that because people know when you flatter them. So when you are specific and you focus on achievement, it is welcome. Think about the physicians are thinkers, right? And they like to achieve and they like to be accurate. So when you use that, you turn around and you acknowledge them based on that things happen. We'll talk about some examples. You want to avoid false praise. Something that did not happen, you want to just do it and say, oh, I know you're so smart and all of that, all those general things. And the more I learn this, when I get that from people, it really actually irritates me inside. And that is just me. And I'm not a C personality as physicians that want quality, they want honesty. Avoid praising people and adding bird. So you say, well, you answered, say, well, this project is well done. You focus on everything that we needed to bird. Once ever you use bird, I don't care whether you're talking to a DIC personality. Once you use bird, you negate everything that you just said. Guess what? Because people will remember only the last thing. So it actually takes away from what you're trying to do because they remember only the last part of it after the bird. So you end up instead making matters worse. When you are acknowledging people, you want to adapt to the style of that person. Now, this is another thing that we have to realize that being unique being. So with a deep personality, I like to touch on this because this is important, very important. With a deep personality, you don't even need to acknowledge them. Guess what? It's a plus because they will acknowledge themselves. And if you don't even acknowledge, they'll take acknowledgments from other people and you. So the deep personality will be saying, you do something with a whole team and they will stand and introduce the team and talk about himself as if it wasn't even a teamwork. So bottom line is the deep personalities love to be acknowledged and they want it to be loud and clear. They want you to acknowledge them in such a way that is so big and they want everybody to know that they did the most in everything, that they were the reason why this actually came to fruition. So we're not going to focus on the deep personalities right now, but just to give you a perspective of how unique different personalities are. Because often than not, a lot of people say, all I did was I just acknowledged them. So how come I acknowledge them and they are taking it that way? I said, thank you, but how you did it really made a difference. The I personality, they live for recognition. So if you have somebody like that in your life, you want to recognize, you want to make it big, you want to make it the palm show and circumstance, they love that. Call them on stage and all that. But with the S personalities as pharmacists, and I know this will resonate with a lot of you, you don't want that kind of big pump and show and huge kind of acknowledgement. I heard of a story that a personality, an S personality, actually quit their job once because the boss was trying to surprise them and really liked what they had done at work and thought that the announcement would be on stage when they had a big occasion at work. That really embarrassed that employee and they felt so uncomfortable that they left their job. So you see how one thing can mean something to another group of people and something else to another personality style. We got to be careful. I can also give an example with my own daughter. I have an S personality, very sweet girl. I remember when she was young and when she was just 2 years old. We had a beautiful birthday party for her, and in the basement, we had friends and we had some other parents. She was supposed to come in and everybody said surprise to her. So what happened as she walked in, they said surprise. Oh, my daughter cried her eyes out. She was so hurt. I couldn't understand why. And now that I know this language, everything now makes sense. I have a daughter that is ID personality. Her third birthday, it wasn't just even a surprise. We carried her on a carriage as if she was a princess. We had four people, they had her on something, they carried her around. Do you know what she was doing? She wasn't embarrassed. There were adults, kids. She was waving people with her little fan or whatever. She loved all of that. So we have to really be very careful how we acknowledge people, because to some people, it might be a good thing. To some, it might actually literally destroy the relationship. Now, with C personality, for sure, they don't mind whether you praise them or not. But if you have to do it the right way. But the thing that they don't want you to do is, if something goes wrong, don't blame them either. Remember, they value accuracy, and they would rather you do not accuse them. Take away the praise if you have to, but just don't criticize them. So criticism is such a big thing for them, and so you have to be careful. But when you take your time to acknowledge a physician, everything changed. When you acknowledge people, you basically make them feel that they are part of the winning game. And let me tell you a strategy that I did then and now, and I still train a lot of people on it, and it works. So every PNT, which was every 3 months, before every meeting, I will actually run a report, because I will keep track of all the doctors that you get feedback from the pharmacists and stuff. Physicians that will call the pharmacy when they're paged within a very short period of time, little things like that. I noted the one that did that consistently most of the time compared to others. Physicians that we worked with to de-escalate patients from an expensive antibiotics to something cheaper that was still very effective for the patient. Physicians that went out of the way to make recommendations for pharmacies, I would do that. What I did was I crafted a letter. I used the hospital letterhead. I said, for example, Dr. Paul, on behalf of the pharmacy department, would like to thank you for going beyond to collaborating with the pharmacy department. Because of your collaboration, we were able to save time, blah, 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 blah. You, as a physician, I state, you made the most return calls back to the pharmacies within the shortest period of time. Because of that, we're able to function effectively and efficiently, and we provide quality care to the patients. Thank you. I had a signature part for the CEO, signature part for the medical director, and I always had a beautiful pen engraved, thank you for pharmacy in the case. Quality, good pen. When I started doing that, it became such a big deal. And then if you help me to de-escalate a patient from an expensive antibiotics, expensive medication, I made sure that I stated, I said, because of your collaboration with pharmacy, we're able to de-escalate this patient from these expensive antibiotics, and so we save this amount of money, at the same time providing cost-effective quality care to the hospital. We put the specific amount right there. Guess what happened? Everything changed in that hospital. I remember my CEO inviting me in her office and giving me 10 reasons why she wanted to thank me for changing the atmosphere or the relationship between pharmacists and physicians in her hospital. One, what started happening was that before P&T, now physicians were motivated. One, you have to realize that when physicians sit together, they talk. So when somebody goes in there with their pen and their letter, they will be talking to other physicians. So I didn't even have to go tell the other physicians that this is what you need to do. This is intelligent leadership. Okay, what I was doing is very intelligent. By them realizing that they didn't get a pen for something means there's something that they need to be doing. You have to realize that physicians are competitive in their own way. They don't want to be rich physicians. They want to be competent, because they are very accurate. They are smart people. They want to know that they are doing the right thing. Subconsciously, they start looking for ways to earn that pen. I didn't tell them they did anything wrong, but I honored the others, or acknowledged them properly, and the news just spread everywhere. The other thing is, I gave this letter to a doctor. I remember when I entered the physician lounge and I gave it, when she opened it, she literally started crying. She said, for my 21 years of practice as an ID physician, nobody has ever given me a letter of acknowledgement. We've gotten letters, reprimands, telling us that we've not met this quarter, or we're prescribing labs. Nobody has ever taken the time to thank me. She was in tears. You see how very little things that we can do can make a difference. In this relational age, we cannot afford to miss certain things. People want people that will relate to them. They want to have good experiences with people. Physicians may come across as analytic, critical, and all of that, but they are human beings too, and they need us to relate to them in a certain way. The power of a pen, that changed everything in my hospital. Do you know what started happening? Physicians, before P&T, they will come knock my door. They will say, hey, they will call me, Dr. Lisa, where are you? Do you need... Are you going, first of all, to say, are you going to call my name at PNT? And then MEC is another meeting that we used to have now with physicians to vote on things. they'll say, are you going to call my name? I was like, then I'll start joking. I say, I'm still looking at it. I'm trying to. So by this time we had that relationship. But there were doctors that started going out of their way to bring tips for me to be able to incorporate in my department. So for example, I had a doctor that came and told me, you know what, do you realize that we can use sodium bicarb instead of cat flow for patients with dialysis to open up the tubes? We're paying 200 and something dollars per dose of cat flow, and sodium bicarb was $5. That saved thousands and thousands of dollars for my department. Not only did they do that, they themselves went and the nephrology group convinced them and said, this is what is done. This is a study. When I took it to PNT, it was passed. Took it to MEC, exactly was passed. Because I was able to build that great relationship with physicians, because I made them feel as part of the winning team, everything changed in the hospital. Medication cost was never an issue. We started saving a lot of money. You as a pharmacist, you can make that difference. The other thing is with pharmacists is I want to touch on what they call listening. In collaborative relational intelligence, we have to really be mindful of the 4 levels of listening. Listening is a very powerful leadership technique, which is hard. I continue to learn every day. Why? Because as human beings, we are prone to, and based on your personality too, we are prone to cutting people off. We want to speak up our ideas. We want to tell people what we are thinking before they have time to even talk. The S personality as pharmacists, we will not have a lot of trouble because not only are you wired that way, you're trained that way to listen. So listening is not, in fact, the S personalities, this personality is the best when it comes to listening, as a matter of fact. And it's not just any kind of listening, active listening. The C personalities listen, but they have this rigid look that you don't even know whether they understand what you are saying, whether they appreciate what you are saying. But an S personalities are really skilled. They know how to really do active listening and actually make somebody feel like they know what they are saying. So communicating will not really be hard, but I want us to pay in mind this. So usually we hear about empathy, listen empathically. With collaborative relational intelligence, we have to take it to the highest level of listening. So when you are talking to somebody, the first thing you want to do is you want to download. You take the perceptual position where you say, well, this is the reason why I really want this patient to be on this. You've done your research. You have an open mind. When you start talking to the physician, you want to listen to the things they are saying and things they are not saying. You're watching their body language, because sometimes, imagine, with everything we've talked about unconscious bias, they have filtered information through that filter in their brain. And so they are doing things based through that filter. And you have to be the negotiator here. But for you to be able to do that, you have to respect the process and you have to listen attentively. Then now you move into the third position, which is empathetic listening. Most leadership training tells you to end right there. So try to listen from the person's own perspective. Try to think about what they're thinking and then listen and respond based on that. But I'm challenging you as an expert of collaborative relational intelligence that you have to go to the fourth level, which is a fly on the wall or meta position listening, which calls for you to be very creative and you have to be the most objective. So this is the listening technique that people like judges need to take, or they are supposed to take. So it's like bringing 2 people in a room with a matter before a judge. The judge does not have any interest in any. So the doctor listens to this objectively, take themselves out of it without any opinion, listen to the matter and passes judgment. So that is how we have to listen, because when we take away our own biases, we're able to listen to what somebody is bringing in. And when we move ourselves from their own perspective, saying, oh, this is a doctor, I just have to believe the doctors because doctors are right, and you remove your own perception and you take a fly in the wall position, you become most objective. So if you realize, like the Board of Medicine in Lansing, what they do is they have to query a physician. The first thing, when that physician sits and the physician sits down with somebody without any medical background, the report to come from somebody that has no bias, and that brings it to the board from an objective standpoint. So that is really very intentional and it's very powerful. So there's a powerful reasoning behind that. So we always want to make sure that we want to move ourselves to this meta position when talking to physicians. When we do that, we understand people better, and because we start listening from a very objective standpoint. And when people realize that you are objective, not only do they trust you, you build rapport with them and they want to work with you more. With physicians, when talking to them, listening, because they take their time to think. With this particular personality, the key here is that you have to be patient. The good news is that the S personalities are wired to be patient. So you want to be patient. They will take their time. They will think, they will look up, look down. They will take their time before they speak. So do them that favor and listen. When you listen to them carefully, and then make sure that when you're listening to them, worry about the details. Or you can even say, oh, thank you for that detail. Because when you do that, you become like them. You're mirroring them. And people like people that are like them. Physicians really appreciate people that really talk about details and, mention details and appreciate details. And you, as from today henceforth, you can be that pharmacist. Okay, so as we wrap this up, I want us to just take a few minutes and do a little bit of practice. And if at the end of this webinar you're not able to answer those 10 questions, shoot me an email and I can give you the answer specifically. But I want you to just think and think, because the answers are already in us. Because after this, you start thinking of things that I did not mention that you said, oh, maybe I would have looked at this way. So think of phrases that cannot be used when talking to physicians. State a phrase that when used enables a physician not to avoid your clinical recommendation. Remember we said that? The please and thank you, okay? They don't make it an option anymore, okay? Strategies that you apply that will cause physician to happily collaborate with you. It's the power of acknowledgement. If you start acknowledging, I have to throw this in there because I cannot overemphasize that. But there are other strategies that I have talked about that I want you to think about and maybe just kind of like play it over your mind and make it better. Take it and make it your own, basically.